Have you ever met someone, and without a word spoken, your soul whispered, "I know you"? Not from this life, but from something older, deeper. It wasn't love at first sight. It was recognition. A sense of calm in your chest, as if your heart had been holding its breath for years, and finally exhaled. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not logic, not timelines, not reason. Just energy, resonance, stillness. At the time, it felt like fate, like the universe had been conspiring for lifetimes to bring you two together. The eye contact was electric. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. You didn't perform. You didn't explain. You simply were. And they saw you. Not just your smile, but your shadow. Not just your words, but your frequency. But here's what no one warned you about. Not every soul connection is meant to last. Some are not your home, they are your earthquake. They don't arrive to build with you, they arrive to awaken you. And when they leave, they don't just take their presence. They take the illusions you wrapped around love, self-worth, and permanence. And suddenly you're left asking, was it real or just a mirror? This is where the journey begins, not of love, but of remembering who you were before you ever needed someone else to see you. Have you ever met someone and something inside you shifted instantly? You didn't know their name. You hadn't heard their voice. And yet a deep, quiet knowing stirred in your chest, like your soul stood up, looked across lifetimes and whispered, "There you are." This isn't about butterflies or infatuation. It's not the rush of desire or the sparkle of newness. It's something older, deeper, quieter. It's the feeling that your soul has recognized another, not because they're your type, not because they check a list, but because they resonate. Because on a level you can't explain, your frequencies match. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence, where two souls cross paths not by accident, but by alignment. Not because the calendar says it's time to love, but because your inner world, with all its wounds, longings, and lessons, has created a magnetic field strong enough to pull this person into your life. They didn't just appear. Your energy called them in. And when they arrive, it feels like the world pauses, like time becomes irrelevant. The conversations flow like you've been speaking for years. The silence between you feels sacred, not awkward. You don't feel the need to impress or filter or prove. For once, you just exist, and it's enough. They don't just understand your words, they feel your energy. They don't just hear you, they recognize you. It's not always romantic. It's not always convenient, and it's definitely not always easy, but it's undeniable. It's the kind of connection that makes you question everything you thought you knew about timing, attraction, and logic. It's the kind that doesn't ask your permission to exist. It simply arrives and takes up space in your life, like it's always belonged there. But here's the paradox. The more real the connection feels, the less likely you are to control it. Because synchronicity isn't about certainty, it's about surrender. You didn't plan this. You couldn't have. That's the point. We live in a world obsessed with algorithms and compatibility test timelines and the one, but the soul doesn't follow formulas. It doesn't swipe left or right. It responds to resonance, and resonance has no checklist. You can meet someone who looks perfect on paper and feel absolutely nothing. Then you meet a stranger, and within seconds, something within you lights up, not because they brought that spark, but because they mirrored it. They strike a chord in you that had long been silent. They awaken a part of your being you didn't know was asleep. It's like your soul is a piano, and they walk into the room and press a key you forgot existed, and suddenly music, emotion, memory, a sense of returning to something you can't name. And this is what makes it so powerful and so terrifying. Because once that part of you is awake, it can't go back to sleep. But not every synchronistic meeting is meant to stay. That's the part we struggle with most. We assume that something so intense, so magnetic must be destiny, that the universe wouldn't bring this person to us unless it was meant to be forever. But that's not how the soul works. Some connections are not your home, they are your mirror. They don't arrive to complete you, they arrive to awaken you. They reflect something inside you, a wound, a gift, a sleeping truth. Sometimes they bring out a softness you had buried beneath years of survival. Sometimes they challenge you in ways that crack open your ego. Sometimes they reflect your pain so clearly that you're forced finally to face it. That's the magic of synchronicity. It isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. It's not about finding someone who fixes you. It's about meeting someone who reveals you to yourself. And the moment you stop romanticizing synchronicity as proof they're the one, you begin to see the deeper purpose. They came when your soul was ready. Not when you were healed. Not when you were perfect. But when you were cracked open enough to receive the lesson. That's why it's powerful. That's why it hurts. And that's why it matters, because these people, the ones who arrive without warning and leave without apology, they aren't here to fulfill your fairy tale. They're here to rewrite your inner narrative, to burn away your illusions, to return you to yourself. So when it happens, when your soul recognizes another pause, listen, not just to what they say, but to what they activate within you, because that's where the truth lives. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't come to stay. They came to awaken the version of you who's been waiting to rise. Let me ask you something honest, and don't answer with your mind. Answer with your memory. Have you ever looked back at your relationships and realized they all carry the same emotional fingerprint? Different names, different faces, different promises, but the same ending. The same pain, the same abandonment, the same feeling of not being enough. It's like your heart keeps choosing déjà vu. At first it feels like bad luck. Maybe you're just picking the wrong people. Maybe love isn't for you. Maybe you're cursed. But it's none of that. This isn't fate. This isn't coincidence. This is your unconscious doing the choosing. And until you make it conscious, it will continue to lead your life, and you will keep calling it destiny. Carl Jung knew this. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What does that mean? It means that the pain you haven't healed is silently guiding every relationship you enter. It means that we don't attract what we desire. We attract what we are. And more truthfully, we attract what still needs to be seen, felt, and healed inside us. If you grew up feeling invisible, you will fall for people who don't fully see you. If your childhood taught you that love must be earned, you'll be drawn to the emotionally unavailable, not because it's love, but because it's familiar. If you carry silent wounds of abandonment, you will love people who leave again and again, because your inner child is still trying to rewrite that story. You think you're falling in love, but really you're reenacting your wounds. And here's the dangerous part: the more unconscious the pattern, the more romantic it feels. You'll say, "We just have chemistry." You'll say, "I don't know why, but I'm drawn to them." You'll say, "They feel like home." But not every home was safe. Not every pattern should be repeated. Not every pull is love. Sometimes it's trauma dressed as fate. That's why love can feel like a test. Because in many ways it is. It's the soul asking, are you ready to stop bleeding where you were never meant to be cut? It's life asking, are you willing to stop choosing what hurts just because it feels familiar? Pain you see is not punishment. Pain is a messenger, a mirror, a map. It's pointing you back to the places inside you that still whisper, "I'm not healed yet." And until you listen, the message gets louder. The breakups get harder. The people get colder. The pattern gets clearer. You will keep attracting lessons in different bodies until you finally sit still and ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me about me? Because every relationship is a reflection. The ones that hurt you, the ones that abandoned you, the ones that confused you, they weren't curses. They were classrooms. They didn't break you. They revealed what was already broken. You see, relationships don't create your wounds. They reveal them. They bring to the surface the insecurities you buried, the fears you ignored, the beliefs you formed when you were too young to know better. Beliefs like, "I'm too much. I have to be perfect to be loved. I'm only worthy if someone chooses me." You didn't invent those ideas. You inherited them from the way you were raised, from the things you weren't given, from the love you had to beg for. And until you question them, you'll keep loving from a place of survival, not from a place of wholeness. But there's good news in all of this. Because if your pain is your pattern, then healing is your freedom. The moment you become aware is the moment you begin to choose differently. You start setting boundaries. You stop romanticizing red flags. You no longer chase people who treat you like an option. You stop begging for crumbs and start expecting peace. You begin to love yourself enough to walk away from the familiar pain. You no longer try to fix people just to feel worthy. You stop believing that love must be earned through suffering. Instead, you love not because you need to heal through someone, but because you are already whole. And wholeness changes everything. It's not louder, it's not more dramatic, it's quieter, steadier, deeper. The kind of love that doesn't feel like addiction, it feels like coming home to yourself. So if you're tired of the same pain in different forms, stop asking why they hurt you. Start asking why you felt so drawn to the pain in the first place. Because the moment you do, you reclaim your power. And that right there is where the healing truly begins. There are people who walk into your life like wildfire. They don't knock. They don't send warnings. They don't ask if you're ready. They just arrive suddenly, fiercely, and without explanation, they set everything inside you ablaze. It's not something you can predict. You weren't looking for them. You weren't planning for love. Maybe you were even convinced you had nothing left to give. And yet they show up. And the moment they do, everything shifts. Your world, your thoughts, your energy all begin to orbit around something unseen but undeniable. They make you feel like you've known them forever, even if you've only just met. There's a familiarity in the way they look at you, not with curiosity, but recognition. As if your soul remembers them from another lifetime. As if every scar you carry was merely waiting for their presence to soften it. You stay up late talking. The hours dissolve. You say things you've never told anyone. Not because you're trying to bond, but because it feels safe. They don't fix your wounds, but they make you want to show them. And for a moment, you dare to believe this must be it. This must be what all the poems, the songs, the stories were about. This is destiny. But then they leave. And when they go, they don't just walk away, they take the air with them. Suddenly, silence becomes unbearable. Memories feel louder than reality. Your chest aches in places you didn't know had been touched. And your mind spirals in circles. Was it real? Did I make it all up? If it meant so much to me, why did it end so fast? Here's the truth that few are brave enough to face. Not all soulmates are meant to stay. Some don't come into your life to build a future with you. They come to destroy the version of you that was pretending to be okay. They don't arrive with forever in their hands. They arrive with clarity. They come to awaken you, not to keep you company. They step into your life like lightning in the dark, illuminating what you've refused to see. The way you settled. The way you silenced your own needs. The way you shrunk yourself to fit into someone else's idea of love. You see, some people aren't soulmates in the traditional sense. They are soul shakers. They are truth bringers. They are not here to hold your hand. They're here to hand you the mirror. And yes, it hurts. It hurts because it's supposed to, because growth always does. We confuse intensity with destiny. We think that because something feels powerful, it must be permanent. But the soul doesn't measure truth in years. It measures in depth, in awakening, in transformation. And sometimes the deepest transformations come from the shortest encounters. They may not stay to see you become who you're meant to be, but they ignite the becoming. They break your heart not to ruin you, but to crack it open. They leave not to punish you, but to make space for your selfhood to emerge. They are the sentence, not the chapter. They are the thunder before your storm of rebirth. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep chasing ghosts. You'll keep trying to resurrect what was never meant to live past its lesson. You'll hold on to people who were only meant to pass through, and in doing so, you'll delay the person you're becoming. Because here's the paradox of soul connections. The more intense they are, the more likely they are meant to awaken, not remain. These are the divine disruptors, the karmic messengers, the ones who trigger your deepest wounds so that you can finally stop pretending those wounds don't exist. And if you don't learn the lesson they came to bring, the universe will send you another one. Different face, different name, same story, same pain, same emotional loop that leaves you asking, why does this keep happening to me? But the better question is, what did this connection awaken in me that I was too afraid to face? Because every storm leaves behind clarity. Every exit makes room for something more aligned. Every heartbreak is a message you were never meant to stay asleep. So don't curse the ones who left. Bless them, thank them, mourn them, and then release them. Because the ones who come to awaken you are sacred. Not because they stay, but because they arrive at the exact moment your soul is ready to remember who you are. They don't love you into dependence. They love you into consciousness. And one day you'll realize they weren't the love of your life. They were the love that returned you to your life. We live in a world obsessed with the idea of finding the one. We're told that somewhere out there, there's a person who will complete us, the missing piece, the twin flame, the soulmate, who will walk in and heal every wound, erase every scar, make every lonely night worth it. From childhood, we're conditioned to believe that love is the cure, that happiness begins when someone finally chooses us, that our worth will be confirmed the moment we are held tightly enough by another. But that story is a lie. Not because love isn't real, but because love that begins in hunger is not love at all. It's dependency. Let's tell the truth. Most people don't fall in love. They fall into need, into craving, into the fantasy that someone else will come and silence the chaos they've been too afraid to face on their own. And so they don't enter relationships to share love, they enter to feed the void. But a void cannot love. A void only consumes. Carl Jung said it best. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But when you come into love, untransformed, still fragmented, still aching, still hoping someone else will do the inner work for you, what you'll find isn't transformation, it's repetition. Pain dressed up as passion, trauma disguised as chemistry, and here's where it gets dangerous. When you're hungry, you can't discern between what's nourishing and what's poisonous. You'll call chaos excitement. You'll call inconsistency mystery. You'll call anxiety love. Because when your soul is starved, anything feels like a meal, even the very thing that's hurting you. You'll chase people who can't give you stability because deep down you're still unstable within yourself. You'll attract partners who can't give you love freely because deep down you haven't learned how to give it to yourself. You'll settle for half-hearted affection because somewhere inside a voice is still whispering, "This is all you're worth." But here's the truth no one teaches you. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And if what you are is unhealed, desperate, fragmented, that is what your energy will call in. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it is consistent. It doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your beliefs, to your self-worth, to the frequency you carry when no one is looking. And so the question isn't, where is my soulmate? The question is, have I become someone who knows how to love without needing to be saved? You see, love is not a rescue mission. It's a recognition of shared wholeness. The most powerful love is not the one that fixes you, but the one that meets you where you've already healed. When you are whole, love doesn't feel like salvation. It feels like amplification. You're not seeking someone to complete you. You're choosing someone who expands you. You're not trying to escape your loneliness. You're deepening your peace, and that changes everything. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop twisting yourself into emotional shapes to be worthy. You no longer stay in places that starve you. You no longer romanticize the pain. Instead, you learn to walk away not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself to stop bleeding for breadcrumbs. Wholeness does not mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you've never been hurt. It means you've stopped using others as a bandage for your soul. You've turned inward. You've faced the silence. You've forgiven the past. You've rebuilt what was shattered with presence, with truth, with grace. And from that place, when love comes, it will feel different. It won't feel like fire that consumes you. It will feel like sunlight that warms you. It won't feel like a test. It will feel like truth. It won't ask you to prove, to perform, or to earn. It will sit beside you quietly and say, "I see you, not because I complete you, but because I recognize myself in you." That is the kind of love that endures. Not two halves colliding in chaos, but two whole souls choosing each other not out of fear, but out of freedom. So if you're tired of heartbreak, if you're exhausted by the high highs and crashing lows, don't search harder for love, search deeper within. Heal the ache, honor your story, raise your standards, because when your energy becomes whole, your love will too. We all grew up with a myth, a beautiful, dangerous myth wrapped in fairy tales, wedding vows and cinematic endings. It whispered to us, when you find real love, it will last forever. That if someone leaves it means the love was never true. That if it ends, it must not have been meant to be. But that's not love. That's programming. That's fantasy dressed up as truth. And eventually, life arrives to break that illusion wide open. You see, every soul you meet has a season. Some stay for years, some for months, some only for a fleeting heartbeat. But each one has a purpose, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. We're taught to measure love by longevity, by how long someone stays. But Carl Jung would say, the true measure of a soul connection is transformation, not time. Did it change you? Did it open you? Did it reflect back the parts of you that were hidden, scared, or asleep? If yes, then it was real no matter how short it lasted. The problem is we hold on too tightly. We cling to what's already expired. We romanticize what we should be releasing. And in doing so, we don't just lose them, we lose ourselves. Because you can only shrink for so long before your soul begins to suffocate. You can only stay in a bond that no longer nourishes you before the silence becomes deafening. And yet we beg. We plead. We try to rewind what was meant to evolve. We say things like, but it used to be so good. But we had a connection. But I thought they were the one. Maybe they were for the version of you that still didn't know your worth. For the chapter of your life where pain was your teacher. For the version of you that needed to learn how to let go of people who don't grow with you. Because here's the truth, no one wants to hear. Growth often means outgrowing people. Not because they were bad, not because you failed, but because your soul changed frequencies and they didn't. Your healing altered your vibration. Your clarity shifted your path. And suddenly, what once felt magnetic now feels misaligned. But instead of honoring that truth, we try to force old stories to keep going. We try to fit back into shoes that no longer fit even though they blister with every step. We forget that letting go can be an act of love not only for them, but for ourselves. Because real love is not measured by permanence. It's measured by presence. By how deeply it made you feel, by how clearly it showed you who you are, by how bravely it pushed you to grow. And some people, they don't come to walk beside you forever. They come to remind you what you're capable of. They come to break the spell you were under, the spell that told you you're unworthy, unlovable, too much, not enough. They come to wake you up. But awakening doesn't always feel like sunlight. Sometimes it feels like a fracture. Sometimes it feels like watching someone you thought was forever disappear into memory. And that grief, it's sacred. It means the connection was real. But it also means it's time to let it go. Because if you keep trying to hold on to what your soul has already outgrown, you don't just delay your growth, you delay your becoming, the becoming of the version of you that walks in truth. That no longer needs a fairy tale to feel complete. That understands not every love story ends in forever, and that doesn't make it a failure. It makes it a lesson, a mirror, a turning point. So mourn what was, cry for the goodbye, but don't lose yourself in the nostalgia. Don't try to go back to the person you had to become small to be with. Instead, bless the bond, honor the connection, and then release it not in bitterness, but in reverence. Because real love doesn't chain you, it frees you. It doesn't demand that you stay the same. It pushes you to evolve, to expand, to rise. And when a soul leaves your life, it doesn't mean the love is gone. It means its purpose is complete. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop asking, why did they leave, and start asking, what did their leaving awaken in me? That is where your freedom lives. Not in holding on, but in letting go with gratitude. Because sometimes the person who changed your life wasn't meant to stay in it. They were meant to remind you that you are the one you've been waiting for. It's easy to point the finger. They hurt me. They lied to me. They left when I needed them most. They made me feel small, invisible, replaceable. And maybe that's true. Maybe what they did was cold, confusing, or even cruel. But pause for a moment. What if they were not sent to destroy you, but to reveal you? Carl Jung once wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people who trigger us the most, the ones who make us ache, question, spiral, are often mirrors, not enemies. They don't create our wounds. They reflect them. They hold up the emotional blueprint we've spent years trying to hide, deny, or bury under logic and distraction. That ex who left you without closure, they didn't invent your fear of abandonment. They illuminated it. That person who made you feel like you had to earn their love, they didn't cause your unworthiness. They showed you it was still living inside of you. That friend who betrayed your trust, They didn't plant your insecurity. They activated the parts of you that still believe love must come with conditions. The pain feels personal, but the pattern is internal, because we don't just react to others, we react to what they awaken in us. And here's where the mirror gets uncomfortable. Sometimes the people we're most obsessed with, the ones we can't seem to let go of, are not our forever. They are our unfinished business. You keep replaying the same conversations in your head. You stalk their silence for meaning. You beg the universe for a sign that it still mattered to them. But the closure you crave from them will never come, because what you really need is clarity within yourself. You're not waiting for their apology. You're waiting for your recognition that they were simply a mirror, holding up everything you still needed to confront in yourself. Maybe it's the belief that you're not enough unless someone is loving you. Maybe it's the fear that you'll always be too much or never quite enough. Maybe it's the wounded voice that says, love only lasts if I earn it. Until you face that voice and heal it, you will keep attracting people who echo it, over and over. Different name, different face, same emotional script, because the mirror doesn't go away. It only changes form. You can block them, you can run from the conversations, you can jump into another relationship and pretend this one never happened. But until you turn inward and ask, what is this teaching me about me? You will keep reliving the same pain with different people. And that's not a curse. That's your soul asking for your attention. Because the people who trigger us are not our punishments. They are our portals. They show us where we're still bleeding. They reveal what is still unresolved. And if we are brave enough to look not through blame, but through awareness, we unlock transformation. Suddenly the story isn't, they abandoned me. It becomes their leaving reflected the part of me that still fears being alone. It isn't, they didn't choose me. It becomes their indifference mirrored the part of me that still doesn't fully choose myself. It isn't, they made me feel unsafe. It becomes their chaos mirrored the instability I've been tolerating inside of me. That shift from accusation to awareness is where your power lives. It's where healing begins. It's when you stop chasing people for answers and start listening to your own reflection. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's easier to say they're the problem. But your evolution doesn't come from comfort. It comes from clarity. Because once you start to see people as mirrors, you no longer need to hate them. You no longer need to fix them. You no longer need to convince them to stay or love you or understand you. You realize they've already served their purpose. They showed you what still needed your attention. They exposed the cracks so you could begin to fill them. Not with someone else, but with truth, with presence, with self-worth. And here's the miracle. Once you've done that inner work, once the wound becomes a scar, once the lie becomes a lesson, you start attracting new mirrors. People who reflect your wholeness, your peace, your healed heart. They won't make you chase. They won't test your worth. They won't trigger your survival mode, because you'll no longer be vibrating at the frequency of pain. So the next time someone triggers you, ask, what part of me are they showing me? Not in shame, but in courage. Because the mirror never lies, but it only reflects what you're finally strong enough to see. There is a quiet transformation that occurs not when you fall in love, but when you finally stop chasing it. After the heartbreaks, after the patterns that leave you questioning your worth, after the emotional chaos disguised as passion, something in you begins to shift. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It's a silent decision made deep within the soul that you will no longer search for someone to complete you because you are learning to come home to yourself. The journey to wholeness does not begin with another. It begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself. You learn to sit in silence, not as punishment, but as practice. You begin to understand that your worth has never been tied to who stays or who leaves. You start facing the shadows you once blamed others for triggering. And most importantly, you begin choosing yourself not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means you no longer treat your emptiness like a calling card for love. It means you've met your own needs enough times that you are no longer starving for external validation. And then something rare happens. Without warning, without effort, someone enters your life not with promises or fireworks, but with presence. They don't trigger your chaos. They reflect your calm. They don't provoke your fear. They match your clarity. And for the first time, love doesn't feel like a high followed by a crash. It feels like steadiness. You don't feel compelled to earn their attention or prove your value. You're not trapped in your head wondering if you're too much or not enough. You simply are, and they meet you there, not with judgment, but with understanding. This kind of love does not consume, it complements. It does not distract, it amplifies. It is not built on longing, but on resonance. The connection is deep not because it fills a void, but because it honors the fullness already present in both souls. When two whole people meet, there is no obsession, only recognition. No desperation, only choice. You see each other clearly, not through the lens of fantasy or need, but through the grounded awareness of what you are both bringing to the table. You're not hoping they'll fix what's broken. You're celebrating what's already healed. They are not your missing piece. You are not theirs. You are each your own complete story, standing side by side, choosing to write a new chapter, not out of dependence, but out of mutual respect and conscious alignment. There is no urgency in this kind of love. No clinging. No fear that one wrong move will ruin everything. Instead, there is patience. There is depth. There is a softness that doesn't fade when the excitement settles because the bond is not based on adrenaline. It is rooted in authenticity. You communicate openly because there are no games to play. You disagree respectfully because your ego is no longer in control. You grow together because neither of you is afraid of who the other might become. And if distance ever comes, you don't collapse. Because when you are whole, you know how to stand on your own. You don't make them your home. You build a shared space where both can thrive. The irony is that love like this only finds you when you stop needing it to save you. It arrives when you've stopped performing, stopped chasing, stopped contorting yourself to be lovable. It arrives when you've chosen stillness over chaos, truth over illusion, self-respect over people-pleasing. It does not come to fix you. It comes because you have already done the work of fixing yourself. And in this love, you are not lost, you are found. Not by them, but by yourself. They are simply the mirror reflecting your return. So if you're still in the process of becoming, still learning to trust yourself, still healing from the versions of love that made you feel small, be patient. Do not rush the arrival of someone else. Focus instead on becoming the version of you who no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. Because when two whole souls meet, it is not the beginning of your healing. It is the continuation of your freedom. At some point, after enough heartbreaks, enough unanswered questions, enough late-night thoughts that never quiet down, something inside of you breaks. Not in a way that leaves you shattered on the floor, but in a way that finally wakes you up. It's the kind of breaking that doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you that what you've been doing no longer works. The chasing, the waiting, the hoping, the pretending. It's all been a strategy to avoid one simple but terrifying truth you've been trying to find in someone else, what you have not yet dared to find in yourself. You see, we're taught to look outward. Society romanticizes the idea that love is something that comes from outside of us, that it's something we earn, something we wait for, something that shows up and saves us. And so we grow up believing that our healing will come in the form of another person, that our validation will be found in someone else's eyes, and that the emptiness within us can be filled by the warmth of someone's arms. But what Carl Jung taught, and what life eventually confirms, is that the soul doesn't heal through rescue. It heals through recognition. And that recognition must begin within. Jung said your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Most people spend their lives dreaming. They dream of a perfect relationship, of someone who will never leave, of a connection so strong it finally makes the pain make sense. But what if the pain wasn't asking for someone else to arrive? What if it was asking for you to finally come home to yourself? That is the real challenge, not to find love, but to face the parts of yourself you've been hiding behind the pursuit of love. It's easier to look for someone else than it is to sit with your own fear of being alone. It's easier to chase validation than to confront the parts of you that still feel unworthy. It's easier to keep repeating romantic patterns than it is to ask why you keep attracting the same lesson in a different body. But when you stop, truly stop, and begin to listen, you start to hear the deeper call. The call that says, stop asking who will love you and start asking why you still believe you need to be saved. Stop asking when someone will choose you and start asking why you haven't fully chosen yourself. Because until you do, every relationship will mirror your confusion. You will find intensity and call it chemistry. You will find inconsistency and call it fate. You will find trauma and call it love. Not because you're weak, but because your unconscious wounds are doing the choosing. And they will continue to do so until you make them conscious. This is where the real work begins. Not in romantic gestures, not in waiting for a soulmate, but in sitting with your own silence. In grieving the version of you who thought love had to be painful. In forgiving yourself for the years you spent chasing people who were never meant to stay. In facing the truth that no one abandoned you more often than you abandoned yourself. And yet here you are, still breathing, still growing, still capable of turning inward and beginning again, not from a place of lack, but from a place of responsibility. You begin to see that the love you were searching for was never about another person. It was about the moment you'd finally meet the part of yourself that no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. And when that moment comes, when you finally stop searching outward and start becoming inwardly whole, your entire frequency changes. You no longer attract chaos. You no longer romanticize red flags. You no longer mistake emotional roller coasters for passion. Instead, you become someone who feels like peace, and so you attract peace. You become someone who speaks with clarity, and so you invite truth. You become someone who knows their value, and so you naturally repel those who try to question it. Love at this level is no longer a rescue mission. It is no longer a transaction built on fear. It is a reflection, a resonance, a choice made between two people who have both done the work to return to themselves first. And that's what makes it rare, not because it's magical, but because so few people are willing to take the journey inward before they reach outward. So if you are tired of the patterns, if you are tired of the ache, if you are tired of waiting for someone else to complete, you let this be your sign. Let this be the beginning of your awakening. Let this be the moment you stop chasing love and start reclaiming yourself. Because you are not too much. You are not too broken. You are not unworthy. You are simply unfinished, and the love you've been waiting for is not lost. It's just waiting for you to stop looking outward long enough to find it within. There's a moment in life when you realize that the love you've been chasing isn't really about the person, it's about the feeling you thought they would give you. For many people, especially in today's emotionally fragmented culture, love has become a stand-in for healing. We date hoping to be seen. We attach hoping to feel worthy. We settle not because we believe this is the best love we can have, but because deep down we fear we won't survive without it. But the deeper truth and the harder truth is this: no one is coming to save you from the work of becoming whole. That work is yours and yours alone. Carl Jung taught us that if we do not make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct our lives, and we will call it fate. That means until we heal the parts of us that believe we are unworthy, we will keep attracting relationships that reinforce that belief. Until we confront the fear of abandonment, we will find ourselves in cycles of being left or ignored. Until we understand our own emotional patterns, we will confuse intensity with intimacy and chaos with love. So what does this mean practically? It means you must stop outsourcing your healing to romantic connection. It means learning to sit with discomfort without needing someone to fix it. It means turning inward and asking, what am I hoping this relationship will make me feel? And then learning to give that to yourself first. Because when you know how to give yourself the safety, the validation, and the love you crave, relationships stop being about survival and start being about choice. The lesson isn't that love is bad, it's that love is sacred, and sacred things require readiness. If you want a love that is deep, grounded, and reciprocal, you have to become the version of yourself that can hold that kind of love. And that means healing, not rushing, facing the mirror, not pointing the finger, taking responsibility, not repeating history. When you stop searching for someone to complete you and start searching for the parts of yourself you've long abandoned, everything changes. You stop chasing and you start attracting. You stop needing and you start choosing. That's not weakness, that's power.